started the Sunset Parent Advocates Group. You heard of this event, so thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Gina, in the back for use of her beautiful space, Sea Level. This is a multi-function space. For example, tomorrow they have a carousel bakery pop-up from 9 to 1 here in the neighborhood. There's also lots and lots of other events such as open mics and performances, so Sea Level SF to find those space. And then I also want to thank our Supervisor Alan for coming today, and thank you for the team for reaching back out to us. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a couple of things. There's a kids' corner. There's snacks and waters. Please help yourself. There is a bathroom through the curtains and on the left if at any point you need to use it. And please don't worry about like the kids' volume or anything. You're a kid-friendly space. We're all parents. Okay. Alan, thank you for coming. And first of all, congratulations on your appointment to City Council. I'm sorry, not City Council, the Board of Supervisors. So we care about quite a few things in this group. We are a group of about 70 members, some of us here tonight. And we pulled our group to see what some of the top concerns were for the district. So that would be sunset dunes, safe streets, transit, and then keeping our neighborhoods beautiful, as well as affordable housing. So we'll kind of touch on each of those things tonight. I know you have a packed schedule, but maybe if there's time for questions at the end, we'll open it up. These questions were also sourced from our group specifically.
And this is your first meeting, or?
Yeah. This is not our first meeting, but it's our first public official meeting, so you have the honor of being
Oh, wow. Okay, may it forever go into history.
Okay, so with all of those things that we mentioned that we care about, we want to start kind of with a little budget question for you. The city of San Francisco is in a budget deficit, and we want to make sure that taxpayer money is allocated to so many of these things that we care about. It's known among our group that you are proposing a ballot measure to close down Sunset Dunes Park, turn it back into a great highway. I'm curious if you have an update on what that would cost taxpayers to take away the park amenities, reinstall signal lights, all of that.
Not starting with the easy question. Well, so I think I was asked a similar question. So that's something that I still need to get more definite information from Parks and Rec and also MTA from to be able to get a more accurate answer. I don't want to give a answer that's not exact because at one recent thing I gave an estimation. I get so estimations are not good.
Yeah.
So that's something that especially throughout this process there will be more. So whenever we do legislation, we have the budget and legislative analysts and other city controllers. They always do. Whenever there's legislation that's submitted, they will do a projection of the different costs of legislation before it's finalized. So when you are going to get that, there is a process though. So in summary, I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but there is a process where we will be getting that. The city is facing a budget deficit, so Mayor O'Leary has also the tough job of looking at the overall budget and defining his priorities. And what happens during the budget process is that it's submitted to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and then we have an iterative process where the budget committee expands from 3 people to 5 people, and then during the budget process, the Board of Supervisors will work on reviewing the proposed budget, and sometimes the Board of Supervisors will take the advice of the budget and legislative analysts and cut things from the budget to try to, if they think, oh, this department's getting too much for this or too much for this, they'll take it out of that pot and they'll try to reallocate it towards other things. And then the board will ultimately pass a budget, and then the mayor can sign or not.
So it's a big, long process.
Yes, and it's $16 billion. Our budget is bigger than many states. So it's a huge budget.
Yeah, I did start with a heavy question then. Yeah, I do know we were looking at Sunset Dunes Park, so in its current state, it costs $1.1 million, with $500,000 of those funds being privately donated, and then the rest were from taxpayers. I do know that there were 7 signal lights along the Great Highway, and I'm told that it costs over $1 million alone for one signal light. I think that the city controller estimates that it'll be less because of infrastructure, but I just wanted to throw those numbers out there for consideration. We're data people. I mean, we started with a finance question. There's a lot about data. We were just discussing it today. So I just want to ask you that as you've been talking to groups in your district, as you've been reviewing the data and the facts, some of the things we've talked about as a group are how, people were concerned about traffic congestion. It's not apocalyptic in the avenues. Collisions have not really increased citywide or in your district. And it could be a great expense to the taxpayers to turn this back into a road. So with those and many more truths pointing to the preserving the park being the common sense outcome, can you walk us through why you still would like to put this on forward as a ballot measure?
Okay, yeah, I think so. For fundamentally, my overall belief that outweighs my most important belief in this is I believe in the sharing of the road for both motorists and also recreational use on weekends. For almost 100 years, the Great Highway has been a road that's been used if folks to go from one part of the city to another, and so it is north to south or south to historically one of the places that each of those two travel. Since we had 14,000 daily commuters daily prior, and at the end of the day, I believe that it should be shared. I want to be able to share the road in terms of during peak commute hours, during weekdays, allow that to be used, while during the weekends, which I think when it's more optimized for recreational use, allow it for that time. The Sunset, we're very blessed to have so many recreational spaces with Golden Gate Park, with Ocean Beach, and also Stern Grove surrounding us, and we're all 10-minute walk from a park in the city. So I do think that we are very, very blessed with recreational space, and my fundamental belief is that we should be able to share the road between those uses, because there are values to both of those uses.
Thank you for that. It's often been called, the compromise, and while groups such as ours kind of reject the language of the compromise when it comes to the park, we do very much agree with the implied spirit of healing the community, because this has been very contentious. So contentious that even the New York Times ran a story on the Sunset in November 2024. Me and others believe that possibly there's a very loud minority of people in the district, in the city, who would like the Great Highway to be open. For those of us who are park supporters, we have been talking about how sometimes it makes us fearful to even put signs in our windows or speak up online. One of our group members said, anti-traffic people are vicious, and it's scary to advocate for the club. So in the spirit of just listening to the experience of people in your community, I wanted to show on here, and actually, Lloyd, can you hit the lights? Yes. I just wanted to show some of the response and backlash that we get as a parent community when we do speak up. So I remove names. A simple pro-park post like this on Facebook pretty much all the time will result in this kind of online bullying. A lot of the messages we see from people are, you are not natives, you are gentrifying the area, we can't wait till you leave. And this is just a sample, and these are from local neighborhood groups. There have also been, this is a picture of the truck that caught fire when there was a sideshow a few weeks ago. And the names that are blacked out is a prominent park supporter, where people are revealing his neighborhood, hoping that there will be destruction that takes place by their homes. You can go to the next one. There's a story that someone in our group experienced some harassment when they were attending a prom cake support event. I won't say it out loud, there's kids in the room. This story was shared on Nextdoor, and these are some of the responses that we got from people on Nextdoor. A lot of, it should never have been closed to begin with, people thinking it was a joke, we will fight till it's reopened, go next. A lot of people just not believing that that story was real. You must not live here. Someone saying that kids don't play outside anymore. Keep going. You're going to leave SF anyway. You should be at school. I'm not condoning what was said, but it does show you how angry we are. And I'm not trying to imply that everyone who is against a park acts like this. Of course not.
But there is an extremely loud and angry contingent of people who are your constituents, and it makes it scary for us as parents to even think about what are the ramifications of the park reopening. So do you have maybe a response to some of what you're seeing?
I do. I think locally in San Francisco, at the state level and federally, our level of public discussion and discourse has been really downgraded, where there's a level of toxicity that's not tolerable. I think for me, having been involved in civic spaces since I was young, in high school, being involved in the SFUSD Student Advisory Council, I was always taught to, whenever I have disagreements with my fellow student advisory council members, we could discuss things amicably and be able to share with each other what we believe. In the past, I was also a union organizer, and I would have to negotiate with management on behalf of workers, and we would have to deal with disagreements in a civil manner and not get toxic. And I think there's a level of toxicity that I think more broadly that has been influenced by a lot of times only talking to folks that they agree with and not being able to expose to other viewpoints that they don't normally get to hear. And I think that it's always important to be able to listen to all different perspectives. That's why for me growing up, actually, when I read my news, I read news from Democratic sources, I read news from Republican sources, I read news from Green Party sources. So that way I'm able to sharpen my own perspectives and be able to do that. I myself, having to vote on very tough issues in the neighborhood, whether it be family zoning plan or with the Great Highway Sunset Dune stuff, or even at City College, when we voted on different educational issues, have faced a lot of toxicity as well. If you look at my own social media comments, you'll get to see the level of toxicity that there can be when there are different issues in San Francisco. And so for me, I think it's important to be able to communicate and talk to everybody in the community and be able to engage in those conversations, even when they're difficult, because at the end of the day, we're all here for the sunset and we're all here for San Francisco. And for me, more broadly, I care about our country and the discourse that we have in our country. And of course, at the federal level, it's very unhealthy. And so I think that we're seeing a level of downgrading in our public discourse that's happening at all levels of government and civic society right now.
Thank you for that. And I also think coming here and listening to our group, and I do wanted to bring this to your attention so you can see that there are so many of us who do support the park and not a compromise. And there are very valid reasons for why we haven't been as vocal in the past. We plan to now. We'll move on from the park. You recently sent a newsletter, and in it you mentioned some of the things that you want to do to the sunset. And one thing you talked about was roundabouts and other preventative measures to curtail things like sideshows in our district. I live on 41st in Kintara, or it's also treated as a throughway. With the Great Highway extension closing, the Great Highway is no longer the most direct route to the South Bay or really anywhere. Can you walk us through what you're thinking for how to protect the avenues in light of that, and when can we expect these changes?
Okay, so recently there was a sideshow at 48th and Kirkham and the block over and apply in Kirkham as well. And it's when I went over there on scene a little bit after the day after it happened, I was able to meet some of the neighbors there, and they were actually the ones that had brought up, hey, what if we had a roundabout here, or what if we had one of those speed bumps, the rubber speed bumps there as potential preventative measures. And other things that were brought up was, hey, how come, so there's some frustration that there was police that had arrived, but was not able to get the folks that were doing the sideshow out of the area. And as many of you may have seen, there's the burning car that was, or not the car actually, it was a U-Haul truck. And for the neighbors, it's very frustrating because someone feared for their lives. They told me that the truck was burning right beside their homes, and they were afraid that the fire could jump onto their house and burn down their homes as well. And it was just a very scary moment. Well, the other thing that was brought up was so many people had weapons and they heard and saw gunshots that were being fired. So that was a level of frustration. And so the things that I heard were roundabouts, speed bumps, also for law enforcement, why isn't there enough staffing to prevent, or when it does happen, to have enough people to push these folks out. For the police side, I'm guessing that their sort of tactic was they probably want to wait a little bit before approaching, because for officers' safety reasons, to be very forgiving to their perspective. But at the same time, the concerns of the residents remain. Why there weren't enough officers to be able to move this sooner? They actually told me that, oh, there's a sanitation truck that drove by, and the sideshow people actually separated for the sanitation truck, but they didn't pay attention to the police, which was kind of interesting. So we've been, my staff here, Jessica, where's Jessica? So she's staffing on some of our MTA, DPW, and many of our constituent neighborhood concerns. And so we have been following up regarding that particular sideshow. And so one update is, as some of you may know, so there's an existing project. Actually on morning, as I go on my morning run down Brooklyn to the Great Highway, and I saw them putting up the signs, right, the speed bump signs, and I was just able to catch that as they were doing it. So as part of a previously arranged project, there's long speed bumps along the Kirkham area. One thing that they're also going to do, that we've been informed by MTA, is that the intersection is going to be changed from a two-way stop sign to a four-way stop sign as well. One disappointing thing that we've been informed by MTA is that they told us that they're focusing some of their resources on some of the speed bumps, roundabouts on the Bayview and Mission areas as the priority areas over the Sunset. So the MTA basically told us, hey, we're focusing our existing resources there, but what we're doing right now is switching it over to a four-way stop. The other thing is they're going to have some traffic engineers look at the site and review it as well. Jessica, did I miss any key points? Okay.
Yeah, we have talked amongst ourselves about more four-way intersections, more like visibly seen crosswalks and lit up crosswalks, especially near schools. So yes, that's a huge priority for your group, and thank you for working with the MTA to try to bring attention to our district. Along with that, many of us, it came up that we want safe street crossings because we rely on alternate modes of transportation. We bike our kids to school, and the lack of four ways is sometimes very scary because the way it is now, people are not sure if it's a two-way or four-way, walking to MUNI. So as far as alternative modes of transportation, it wasn't really mentioned in your newsletter. I noticed that out of the 7 topics, quite a few, I think 2 or 3, had to do with cars, including the Great Highway, increased parking on Terrible and Noriega, allowing people to park more cars in their driveway. So what are you planning to do to kind of improve alternative modes of transit, whether that be safer bike lanes or, making MUNI more accessible and more frequent?
Yeah, so for MUNI, there was a time in my life when my family, we didn't have a car at all when I was growing up, and so I would actually take MUNI everywhere from the city. We take it to go to downtown, we take it to go to Richmond, and for me, going to school, going to all the way to City College, sometimes my commutes would be 1.5 hours taking MUNI, but that's all I had as a youth. And I understand the value and importance of MUNI. Also, I took MUNI every day to work at, to City Hall and as well. And so many people count on MUNI to do everything. And the other thing is, if MUNI is not successful, then there's further congestion and slower traffic on our streets, which should be an incentive for also the people that drive to also support MUNI as well. One thing that's really important is that, so the city of San Francisco has been working on having a responsible budget for the MTA, and they've worked on getting things to be more efficient with the budget as much as possible. At the same time, if there's no further funding, then there will be drastic cuts to the community. So one thing that the city administration is pushing is for partial caps for MUNI, likely to be in November. If I remember the dollar amount correctly, it would be $129 per parcel for your regular household, and then it would go progressively higher for some of the larger spaces, like some of the big business buildings that, and I don't have the exact numbers with me for that, but it would be progressively higher based on larger buildings. And so the MTA and the city see that as very important to ensure that we maintain vital services and also be able to expand and make more efficient services to their neighborhood. So that is a top priority in order to maintain existing MUNI service and to improve it as well. So this neighborhood, in the past, there was a previous ballot measure that supported expanding the modalities of transportation to support public transit infrastructure, and it didn't reach the threshold to pass. And so in the Sunset, this was one of the neighborhoods where we were not able to get enough support for the measure, and it kind of pulled it down and it didn't end up passing. So this is one of the critical neighborhoods where we need to have enough support to district forward in order for it to get through. So one thing that I will need to do is use my position to advocate and to support that, even though there may be some resistance in the neighborhood to having that parcel tax. The other thing is for bicycling. I think that we need to invest in all of our modalities of transportation. So I did talk about cars in that newsletter, and at the same time, I support MUNI, I support bicycles. I think that sometimes people see that there's like a zero-sum game, and I don't think there is a zero-sum game. We can be able to support bicycling, we can be able to support MUNI and people to driving without seeing it as one group being pitted against another. So I think for the solutions that I plan to push in the future going forward, and the way that I think is seeing how we can promote things that aren't one way or another, where we can, I think it's an additive thing. You can support more those MUNI, you can support more bicycles in the neighborhood, and it doesn't necessarily take away from parking or other things. So the other thing that we have been also looking into, suggested by some other neighborhood groups, is a neighborhood shuttle that can shuttle people around the neighborhood, whether it be to schools and other places. I wasn't in a meeting today about that, but Jessica, did you have any more updates of the meeting that you had about the shuttle?
Yeah, so it's in the study phase, and we will need to also bring it to the committee and hearing and the full board to continue and to launch the pilot program. We need to take a comprehensive look of the funding structure. Because it's a district-specific project. Right now, there is a shuttle service that was recently launched in the Bayview, and they have the grand structure over there. I will definitely keep the group posted, and it will be, the model is on demand. You can use the app or a call center with multilingual services to request the shuttle. It will be at pick up and drop off at the nearest intersection. But for people with access limitation and seniors, it could be door-to-door service. I think that's very exciting. But again, it's more. The first step is to get the funding too. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, we definitely think that the public transit is a very important thing to invest in our district, especially because of the passing of the Family Housing Act recently, which will increase, my understanding of it is that it will increase the ability to build more units near public transportation. It will be coming to sunset soon. And also, I think we expect an influx of families into the neighborhood in general because of San Francisco Unified changing their school assignment policy to be more neighborhood choice. And we're lucky to have some of the best schools in San Francisco. But for families who have been priced out of single families homes here, or people who will be coming in with these new developments, what are your plans for implementing the Family Housing Act, or making sure that there is protection of affordability? Will you embrace things like rent control, et cetera?
Yes, and so on my second day, I voted on the family zoning plan, and it was a very tough vote because it's a very contentious issue, and there were many folks that weren't happy about me for that. But I think that at the end of the day, it was a choice that made sense for our communities. For so long, we haven't had the opportunity to build housing in new places or the West Side. As somebody that grew up here, I've lived in Taos pretty much all my life in Sunset, and part of my dream is being able to someday have my own place. But with homes costing nearly close to $2 million, it's more closer to, I think, 1.7 or something like that. But think about the mortgage for somebody even trying to get a home, or even to rent a home that has a mortgage like that. For regular San Franciscans, it's very much impossible to be able to afford something like that. The family zoning plan will be able to allow us to get more housing in areas that historically have not had housing. And so what it does is that it rezones San Francisco to allow certain places in the city to have the opportunity. It doesn't necessarily create housing, but it allows us to have that opportunity. So in key commercial and merchant corridors, such as Slope, Taraval, Irving, Judah, Noriega, along 19th Avenue, the zoning has changed for those areas where we'll be able to, there'll be opportunities for people that on their own are able to build their own housing. So it doesn't necessarily require it or mandate, but it's the opportunity and the zoning changes to allow, because for much of the neighborhoods on the west side, it's been limited to certain heights and other things that prevent us from getting more housing in the neighborhood. And so that allows for some denser housing. And at the same time, for some of the folks that oppose it, I can see why some people have opposed it. Because a lot of people do move to Sunset because they they like the low density. At the same time, I think that family zoning plan, it's pretty fair in that it focuses on the key commercial and merchant corridors and the inner neighborhoods. We retain the neighborhoods that are on the smaller blocks about the commercial corridors and are not exactly in front of the transit corridors. The other thing is we were required to do this. So the state had a mandate for us. If we did not pass the family zoning plan, what would have happened is that the state would have said, you did not pass a compliant zoning plan that allows for more housing to be built. If you don't do that, then the state will come in and do their own thing and mandate housing where they want to. And so it was a logical choice to pass the family zoning plan because San Franciscans did have a voice in how we zone out our communities. And it was actually a pretty tough vote because there's a lot of opposition to it, but I think at the end of the day, it's something that's very incremental and will happen over time because it's not actually mandating it at any particular place. It creates a zoning and the opportunity to do so. The other thing is absolutely support rent control. I've lived in rent control places pretty much my entire life. It's so important to stabilize the housing for people. My own family would not have been able to live in San Francisco if not for rent control in-laws that we were able to live in. The other thing is recently I toured the affordable housing complex over at 2550 Irving, and that's really amazing. So from the time when I worked in the Supervisor Gordon Marr's office, that's when it first started. And to see it finally getting close to completion is so important. It will increase the number of affordable units in the neighborhood, and in the sense that we haven't really been doing our part in building housing, and that is one, even though it's not that many units comparatively to places on the east side, that's a huge development that we finally have in the neighborhood for housing. So I want to be in the Sunset and in places across the city. I think it's important that we look at affordable housing with an open mind and be able to get it in different places in the city.
Thank you. I want to be mindful of your time.
So maybe we'll wrap up with one final topic, which is something our group cares about is playgrounds, neighborhood beautification and upkeep, trees, nature, etc. New housing that we're going to be building, new eyesores, it can be more infrastructure, block views for homeowners. In your newsletter, you mentioned that you'd like to push forward a measure that would remove the requirement of trees from new construction, from basically new buildings in general. So what is your plan to keep our spaces beautiful, especially if we aren't prioritizing things like greenery and landscaping? And then also I wanted to ask about if you have an update on some of our playgrounds that need to be refurbished with this subject.
So to clarify, the policy doesn't, the policy that you mentioned doesn't require or eliminate, or how do you phrase it?
It eliminates the requirement for trees to be put in as part of new construction.
So what it does is, so currently there's a requirement when there's a development in housing or development in property, there's a requirement for the owner to put a tree there. And so what happens is, for some people, especially small property owners, that may create a complicated process where it prevents them from being able to develop their property and get housing. So what the city is trying to do as part of Mayor Lurie's Permit SF program is to simplify the process and make it easier for people to make changes. So what the policy does is it would give an option to the person developing the property to, okay, either you comply with the existing requirement to put a tree there, or you can pay Department of Public Works the equivalent of 3 years to put in a tree and take care of the tree, and DPW, instead of the property owner having to go through the responsibility of going through the permitting process and also the complicated process of putting a tree there, DPW will be able to accept those funds and use those funds from that fee to allocate the trees in wherever they deem necessary to where we need to have a further tree canopy in the city. So it doesn't necessarily eliminate the trees. What it does is it centralizes the resources to DPW if the property owner chooses to do so. So that way DPW can strategically allocate the resources where there may be less tree canopy. So it's a potential win for for somebody that is looking for a less complicated process of going, okay, I want to develop my property, build more units at the same time as requirement that they may feel like be slowing down for them. They can just give money directly to DPW to use that money to plant a tree. So I see it as sort of like enable to win-win process where they can either do that or the city can centralize those resources. The funny thing is today I was actually meeting friends of the urban forest, and they told me that they liked that provision in the legislation, the in lieu fee, because there is no existing fund to support them in planting trees. So they, in the meeting with them, they're telling me that, oh, this is potentially a good thing that's part of the legislation that we're discussing.
Thank you. I know we're running out of time, so I think just finally, how can we best work with you in your time as supervisor, whether that be as a group or individually, if you have even small concerns such as upgrading sidewalks, safety, etc.
Yeah, I think that I've been a team of 4. I'm very happy to have filled up my entire staff. It took a while to find stuff, but I've got 2 staff dedicated to constituent services. And that's really important to me because in the Sunset, we have so many people move here and want to live in this community because they want to have safe and clean streets. They want to send their kids to good schools. And at the end of the day, we want good quality neighborhood that has safe and clean streets. And so Jessica said, one of my staff, she used to work for social services organizations, including the Cancer Society, Red Cross, Self-Help for the Elderly, and has done casework with so many folks before. And so that's part of the reason why I saw her resume. I was like, I got to have her on my team. So my other staff, that is also constituent services, Tiff Sen, she was with Department of Elections before, used to work on interacting public engagement. Tiffany, actually, I missed the last name. So we have both my constituent services staff here, and so if there are any kind of daily concerns about whether it be public works or other things, my staff can do direct contacts, and they will be able to contact the departments on our neighbors' behalf, so that we're able to cut through the city bureaucracy and help you guys directly. And I think for other things, if there are community events that are happening, I'm hearing about many things here and other places, I would love to find out and be able to join you. And for me, as somebody that's lived here all my life, there's so many places I still haven't explored. So I'm looking forward to just getting to know everybody and explore all the places and be a booster for local small businesses and restaurants too, and visit them all. You may see me posting about different places I eat. So I want to just check out new places and do that and be able to experience all of the Sunset. One final plug I would put in is, so before my appointment, my day job was working as policy director at Children's Council of San Francisco, and at our organization, the job of the organization is to support childcare and help families get access to childcare. Before, it was called the Childcare Switchboard because it started with 2 ladies that had a whole bunch of note cards that they kept track of all the childcare providers in the city, and people would call them and they refer them. And so right now, Children's Council of San Francisco, they're stewards for the public funds to implement Baby Proposition C, to give to help the subsidies for childcare across the city, also to resource and referral for childcare centers. The other thing is that they help early educators get for their salaries, help with their recruitment and retention by bringing that early educator wage increase, as well as infrastructure development for childcare facilities in different parts of the city. So if there are needs around childcare, around that, I'm pretty much a policy expert in that area, and I want to be able to help make the Sunset a family-friendly place so that people are able to to send their kids to good quality schools, to be able to raise children here, and not feel overburdened by an expensive city. And so I'm here for that. Please feel free to reach out to me or my office, and my two staff are here. Please take our information. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I think we have a couple more minutes with you. I wanted to open it up to see if anybody would like to ask a question in that time. Lori?
Yeah, so getting to your point on childcare, having Sons of Dunes as a park has allowed us to have a daycare that we can go to on the other side of the sunset. It's been an amazing resource. We never would have done that without it because we can walk there now. We feel comfortable and safe. Additionally, with the tree planting, I have a lot of concerns on that. I live on Judah and Playa. There's an apartment building right in front of us. They just did resurfacing and they planted a bunch of trees. It's beautiful. It slows down the cars. It's a wonderful resource. And something you mentioned before with MTA is they're not willing to allocate resources to our neighborhood at this time. If we put this all in a bucket and we say, hey, go plant trees that you think is fine, is the sunset going to be ignored then? There's
That's a
no
legitimate concern. One person did bring up to me, hey, Supervisor, what if you suggested that for the resources, if the resources from one particular supervisor district, that it requires them to spend it within that district. So that was one thing that was brought up. Today, actually, when I met with Friends of the Urban Forest, after connecting with them, we were checking with the mayor's office, who's the primary sponsor, because this is part of the broader permanent asset program that we're working to try to make government a little bit more easier to access and efficient, to be check into the legislation and see what other concerns have been brought up, so that way we can look into how we can refine it. Because yes, trees are important. Actually, when I was a kid, I was a big fan of Friends in the Urban Forest, so I would show up to their events to volunteer. So getting trees in our neighborhood is very important to develop that urban canopy, because it's key to us to get fresh air. And so,
And I mean, we worked with Friends of the Urban Forest to get a tree planted in front of us. It was extremely easy. We had a tree up in a month. So I don't see how it's a challenge for these people to add these trees to our neighborhoods. So maybe it's, hey, let's just make that planting process easier so you get the tree up rather than just pay a fine and we'll figure it out.
Your question?
Hi, I'm Natalie. I've lived in Sunset for over 20 years. And I'm curious with the park, since it's so popular citywide, if this ballot initiative fails and the park persists, similar to JFK Promenade, which went before the voters 2 times, 3 times, is the plan just to keep re-rolling on this ballot measure, or what's your plan if the park continues to exist?
If my policy position doesn't proceed this year, then I would leave it there.
Hi, I don't know if you remember me and my wife, we talked to you at the Children's Council gala.
Oh,
Yeah, for quite a while. We were very impressed with you, so we're happy that you're the supervisor. I sort of feel like sometimes I used to live in the Mission, and I feel like coming here, the City Hall's kind of forgotten us. And one thing that I hate to bring up something, one thing that really annoys me is that one of the reasons I supported making that park was we spent about $500,000 a year. We had spent $500,000 a year clearing the sand. And I sort of feel like they should have said, hey, that $500,000 can stay in the sunset. And I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, if I can just bitch about it and you can hear me out.
I mean, I haven't checked myself, but don't they still have to do the sand clearing right now as well?
I mean, not at the level of frequency
So it was
they
super
were before.
expensive because it had to be done to get the cars started. So it was emergencies when they had to clear the sand. And that was at least at the most 65 days of every year.
So what you've heard or observed is that they may be doing less sand clearing than, because I was going on a tour of Sunset Dunes that Brian Way is, and they told me how they were having volunteers shovel the sand. So it doesn't make sense that they would have less resources to do sand removal now, because I mean, I would think that even for recreational use, you would want to still clear the sand at the same rate that you did before. So
I think it works the way it is. It's just sort of, and it was part of the controller's thing for provocative saying, okay, we would say $500,000 a year. Like that money should really stay in the city, whatever it is. Maybe some of it goes Sanford, maybe some of it goes Toronto, maybe some of it goes, but like it at least stays in the sunset.
I think the question is too, is District 4 paying that fine? Or are we paying for that standard out of our tax dollars?
Or the city is paying.
It's a citywide budget, right? So at the end of the day, it's about how we distribute resources from City Hall across the city. And I think the big picture answer to that, not getting into the specific details, is at City Hall, I want to fight to get as much resources as any district representative should be, to get as much resources from City Hall into our district, right? Because one of the things that I actually said during my swearing in as one of my top 3 priorities was youth education. And one thing that I mentioned was getting appropriate funding for beacon centers and wellness centers in our neighborhood, because historically a lot of those resources have been placed at the center of the city. But we do have families on neighborhoods that are more in the outer part of the city that are not in your historically centralized urban parts of the city. So we do deserve those resources. So getting funding for our wellness centers, our beacon centers, our childcare centers, our public schools, all those things is really important.
I think I saw one hand in the back of the room.
Thanks for being your supervisor and managing that. I'm not experienced in the neighborhood. I think it's interesting to hear that you are proposing this ballot measure and also admitting that you don't know how much it's going to cost to change back to how things were with the compromise. That to me is putting the cart before the horse is one thing. It's very concerning. It shows that you don't have all the facts behind a very contentious thing that you're supporting. The second part of it is, I voted for Ken, I'll say that, but I'm largely ambivalent at this point. I'm not 100% sure what the correct direction is, but the fact is, we're in a democracy. We talked about the kind of rhetoric going back and forth, the divisiveness, the sort of whiplash that we're all going through in politics on a national scale. And what you're insinuating here is that people's votes don't matter because of the vocal minority. Why would you want to relitigate something that the voters already decided on?
So there's several things that you mentioned. There's trying to make sure I address the different points. So in terms of standard legislative process, usually you need to kind of draft up the legislation and determine what the legislation is before we're able to get some of these other departments, such as the Controller's Office of the Budget and Legislative Analyst, to look into. So you have to finalize the legislative language so that they can look into the projected cost, right? So that is the process to do that. So we will get that number and we'll be able to all see it, and actually that typically goes on the ballot with any legislation. So when that number is determined, it will be for everybody to see and identify and make a judgment based on that number. And in terms of your bigger question about the ballot measure, so for me, it is the biggest issue in the district wherever I go, whether it be people that support Sunset Dunes or reopening the Great Highway. That is the first question that is asked of me wherever I go. It is the number one issue in this district, and there's just some part of me that wishes, hey, like, why aren't we able to focus some of our energy on some of these other issues, like in the neighborhood, right? Like, for me, like, my top issues that I've always worked on, whether it be Gordon Marr's office previously known as legislative aid, or or my career has been public safety, youth and education, and being a union organizer as well. So those have always been the issues that I really care about. It's not the issue that I picked. It's the issue that sort of came with the job. And for me, it's the issue that has been brought up by people all across the district with a variety of different views, and that's where I landed, and that's where my perspective is. So I think my answer earlier, if if at the end of this year, it doesn't, my policy position doesn't go through, I would let it be.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work on affordable childcare, and we hope to work with you to address these issues. Thank you. Great job.
If there's any other